Hello. In this episode, we're doing things a little differently. We're joined by two other licensed therapists, and you'll hear the four of us talking and get a glimpse behind the curtain of what it sounds like when we gather around a table and talk shop. Meredith and I will be back in a couple of days with an episode featuring a client session for our regular weekly show. Hope you like it. Welcome. I am Doug Friedman.
And I am Meredith Levy.
And this is Your Mental Breakdown, the Roundtable bonus edition.
And for those of you who don't know what a roundtable is, don't worry, because I didn't either. And we're not at a roundtable.
No, it's kind of a tree table. Mm-hmm. It's just a bunch of people talking at the same time. Maybe not at the same time.
But together.
Together. And we're joined today by two people that I absolutely love. Good friends, very good colleagues, and good therapists. First, my friend I've met maybe, 15 years ago, when I was first starting private practice and still in community mental health and trying desperately to get out. He was a wonderful voice and cheerleader for that. I think you gave me a lot of great insight, and you actually had your version of roundtables with salons that got people together and really made me see that therapists can work together as a community and be very collaborative with each other. So you're instrumental in me starting out going into private practice. My good friend, John Sovec.
Hey, good to be here at this not quite round table.
Yay.
And John, do you want to say what you specialize in or what you do or any of that?
It's interesting because that's really a multi-pronged thing for me. There are lots of things that I love to do. I primarily am in private practice in Pasadena, and I specialize in working with LGBTQ adolescents and their families during the coming out process. It was such a fascinating thing to come to me because I'm an openly queer man, an openly queer therapist. I think that's part of my kind of social kickback to be open about all this work. And in grad school, nobody did much training on working with LGBTQ populations. There was maybe at most, I don't know what you remember from your schooling, but maybe 2 or 3 hours of a very general overview.
Well, I'm 400 years old, so back then it was way back.
And you don't look a day over 325.
Oh, that says me.
Our other guest is somebody that I met maybe just 4 or 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah. And we were in the same building sharing private practice. And this is Bonnie Ray, who is part of that collaborative community of therapists. Now she's fully on her own. She's abandoned me, but...
Oh, I miss you daily, Doug.
Aw,
I do.
Thank you. Another wonderful therapist. And you actually did teach a little bit at Antioch.
Yes. So right? I'm primarily a private practice therapist, but I do teach lesbian liberation, lesbian identity, and queer women loving women's sexuality at Antioch University in their LGBTQ specialization track for psychology graduate students.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I went to Antioch.
You did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know you were a teacher there.
I am.
Wow. That's awesome.
Right. So I do, like you, John, I do specialize in LGBTQ psychology as well as working with people in the entertainment industry. So a lot of writers, directors, producers, actors, people in just the creative fields as well.
And you have a background in the creative fields too.
I do.
Yes.
I don't like to talk about that much.
We'll cut that out.
No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I do have a background in the entertainment industry. I grew up in the entertainment industry. So I get it. And I think my clients appreciate that I understand. I get it. They don't have to explain a lot of how it works with me. So that is something I'm open with.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I think that's such a fascinating point too, is that when our clients know that we get it, actually letting them know that we get it can be so valuable. And having that background, even though you may not speak openly about it, in the world, just sitting in that room and knowing I'm an entertainment person, and for some reason I know that you get it.
Totally.
That's one of the most powerful things that can happen in the room sometimes. Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah. And you spoke to that earlier with disclosing your sexual orientation. And I do that with all of my clients. And I don't just work with LGBTQ people, but it's an important part of me. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think clients do pick up on that. And it's not like you need to know every detail about everything, but just knowing that I understand this, I know where you're at, where you are.
Jeez,
Did you guys get that in school too? That meet your client where they're at?
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
is
all the time.
Which is-
grammatically incorrect.
we
which
don't-
drives
Totally.
me crazy.
You cannot end a sentence with a
With-
preposition.
But I will now never forget that
Yeah.
phrase. So you always think about that.
Yeah.
Speaking of where the client is at, I kind of wanted to open this up and start with how we start with clients, because a lot of people, even coming to therapy, even making the first call to a therapist, all of that is very nerve-wracking for a lot of people. And I wonder, for you guys as therapists, is there something that you like to do or like to start with, or how you start with a brand new client, whether it's that first phone call to you or that first meeting in the office, when you know that they probably are holding that, where do I begin? Where do I start? How do I do this?
Right. I don't know if this is directly answering your question, but
I have a feeling we'll do a lot of that.
I was thinking about that on my drive here, and how at the beginning of my career, I used to get anxious about a first session, right? Because I want someone to come in. I needed clients at that time. I was a beginner. And now I feel like the first session's my favorite session, because what brought me into this work in the first place is connecting with people and my interest in people. And so somebody new comes in, I'm excited. Not that I'm like, hi, nice to meet you, but it's like, come in. And I just want to get to know about you. And I'll talk a little bit, talk about what I do. And I don't know, there's something about that first session that's enjoyable for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I'll talk more about that in a second. But John, I want to hear where you are on this too.
Well, I think it's really interesting because, like, for me, that first phone call is the bravest moment that any client is going to go through.
Yes.
Because a lot of times you'll chat with people, it's like, yeah, I've had your information for 6 months, or I keep going, I went to your website a lot of times, or I heard you speak at something 2 years ago, or read something a long time ago, or a friend of mine mentioned. But that moment of actually like picking up the phone and making that connection, that's a big deal for a client coming in. And for me in that moment, I'm actually way less clinical. I'm more like, just like, hey, so tell me a little bit about what's going on. What do you need? You know, I keep it really casual and really conversational, so it's very inviting. I really try not to use big psychological words in that moment. I don't use that a lot in my practice anyway, so it's just not who I am.
Yeah.
But especially on that first phone call, I want them to realize there's a really cool person on the other end who is ready to sit down with them and just be present. So for me, that first phone call, I know all the anxiety that comes up for people.
So funny, because I often don't even have a phone call. I don't ask anything for the most part about what's going on. I'm like, okay, let's schedule something and come on in and like talk about it. I really want to wait till I meet them to find out. I mean, if they really want to tell me, that's fine. And sometimes it just depends. If we are playing phone tag, I'll just email them or text them and be like, hey, what time works for you? What day? Like, let's just come on in. And then like the other day I had a client that had been back and forth, and I could tell was kind of hesitant. And I was like, listen, I'm an amazing therapist. Just come in. And he started laughing, and I was
love
like,
it.
yeah, I was like, okay. But you and I had talked before, and I'm pretty, once you get past the first session, but I have an assessment, like paper assessment that I sit there.
With
yeah.
you. Yeah.
And I sit there and I'm like, okay. And I fill it out and I'm like, siblings, do you have siblings, parents, are they still married? And then, what meds are you taking, if any, and history of trauma and any legal issue, and I fill it all out. I'm very meticulous with my notes. And I've had them subpoenaed before once.
Wow.
So yeah, after that.
And I think that's throwback to, we started in the county.
DMH notes.
So doing that paperwork for, the government agencies, your notes have to sound a certain way. You have to do the certain assessment forms.
Right.
And I think over time, I would take the assessment form with me when I met a client. We went into their houses and I would go through everything. Then I would learn, okay, I know most of those questions. I'll just talk to them and then I'll get in my car and then fill the form out. Then it was, I can fill it out when I get back to the office. Then eventually it was, I don't even need the form. I'll just talk to the client.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's so interesting because as far as the intake process, I email my stuff to clients ahead of time and they fill it out themselves at home.
Oh.
They bring it within the first session. And one of the things I do is I say, sit down, catch your breath, just get used to the room. And I'm going to look through this real quick and it'll give me a heads up on where to start.
Nice.
And the thing that I love about having them fill it out too, though, is not just the information they answer. You can also also see like their handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
can notice if they're stressed out, if you're asking a scaling question. It's like interesting because if that was truly where you were on a scale, you would be hospitalized right now. But that's how they're seeing their experience.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot to having the client actually fill it out and bring it in and use that as like a stepping stone.
Totally.
Right.
Is it like an assessment type thing, or that what you have them fill out?
It's more of a self-assessment style.
Okay.
It looks at things like, family relationships. It opens up space to talk about medical issues. It kind of gives a little like self-checklist of potential things that you might be feeling, like loss of sleep.
Can
or
you
things
email
like
that to me?
Absolutely.
Great, thanks.
So I use a program called Simple Practice.
Oh, me too.
You use that as well.
Yeah.
So it sends out my paperwork.
Advertising
Before-
dollars.
Oh, hey.
Great. I actually didn't know that was a
Yes. So
thing.
not only do they create,
Yeah.
they create the paperwork for you. So I know I'm not missing anything, HIPAA
Right.
compliant, all of that. When I book a session, because like you, Meredith, I will get on the phone if someone asks, and I'm also much better. You like that? And I'm also much better in person. So I feel like vibe, energy, you can really pick up meeting someone in person.
Yep.
Says the
Absolutely.
woman behind the mic right,
Right.
now. But
So
simple
come on in, everybody.
Right.
Meet us.
Yes. So simple practice, it sends out the paperwork before.
Yeah.
I ask them to fill it out before coming in. This is so I get the background information. Are you taking medication? What are you coming in for? Like you said, John, I get a better idea of what they're looking for. What they don't answer is really interesting. How they answer it. Also, for me, I might read it and right away go, you know what? In my gut, I know I am not the best therapist for this person.
You have them send it back to you before. Ooh.
Because if I'm already going, I'm not the best person, or this person is dealing with something that I don't specialize in, and then I have other therapists pop up that would be better,
Yep.
before having them come all the way in. Sometimes I'll say, I'm willing to see you. I'm getting this feeling, and I can help, bridge you to another therapist.
Yeah.
Or right off the bat, I say, you know what? I read your paperwork and I don't think I'm the best fit for you. Let's hop on the phone. Let me make sure that's correct. And I have 3 people that I'm willing to send you to.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I love that. And I got to say that a lot of what you're talking about, John, what you were talking about with reading how they fill certain things out, we do this without judgment at all.
Yeah.
It's just information that we're gathering about the client. So if there are clients listening to this going, oh crap, I don't want to fill anything out. They're going to tear me apart.
Oh, they're gonna reject me already.
Right,
They haven't
right.
even met me.
Right.
Totally.
Interesting thing though, because I work a lot with adolescents, is I have the parents fill one out on their view as what's happening with the adolescent. And then I have the adolescent fill one out on their own separately that the parent actually doesn't see.
Amazing.
Right.
And you
I
get 2
love
different
that.
versions of a reported same experience.
Sure.
So it's really fascinating. And also working with adolescents too, there'll be this moment where we'll be going through it and the parent's not in the room at that time. It's like, so you answered this question this way. So is this actually true? And
Right.
they're like, no, I did that so my parents wouldn't know.
Amazing.
Love
Right.
that.
So
Yeah.
that'll happen a lot. We're talking about drugs, alcohol, sex,
Yeah.
things like that,
Yeah.
sexual orientation, gender identity. They may not want their parents to in any way, shape, or form see that. And so once again, it's a tool to step off with. And I kind of use it as like a co-conspirator moment. It's like, let's join right now and
Yeah.
tell
Totally.
me,
Yeah.
tell me what's
Yeah.
really going on.
Oh, I love that. And it's that even the way you're talking about that, one function of a therapist is somebody that can, in a sense, hold your secrets and help you figure them out so that the secrets don't eat you up. Because a lot of times, I know, John, in the work that you do specifically, they're coming to you because they've been holding this secret or they're holding this and it's tearing them up and wreaking all sorts of havoc on them or their relationship or dynamics. And it really is about, okay, here's somebody that can align with you in that, right?
Well, I think that also helps with me being very open about my queer identity. Because if you Google me, and all of our clients are Googling us, just everybody know that.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's such a shame.
And it's I think it's wonderful because I'll have a kid come in and say something. It's like, oh, you Googled me, did you? And we'll use that. But being so open with who I am and what I do in the world, my political activism, my social activism, that it's right out there, allows clients to have an idea of what they're coming into. And if we go back to that initial phone call energy and that coming into that first session energy, having some idea of who this person is you're going to meet, I think is really important. Because oftentimes new clients will sit down and say like, you're exactly like the person I read about on your website. And I think
so
that's
important.
really important.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because the four of us are similar in that way. There are so many therapists that are blank slates, right? You know, will not answer any questions about themselves, which is all fine, right? Everyone works differently.
Totally.
And people need different styles, and who, you know, will not disclose anything about themselves, which is fine. And it's just, we happen to all sort of work more similarly in that style.
Sure. And we can hear it and feel it out. Like Bonnie, you were saying, I'll know when it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
Like you can tell when our style, not that we all have the same style, but similar in just being authentic and being pretty open about things. If a client feels more guarded or needs something a little more analytical or structured, that might not necessarily be one of us, you hear it and you go, oh, that's okay, with no judgment, going, I think there'd be a better fit because there are people out there that would do that for you. So if you don't gel with one of us or what we're talking about, that's not any fault of yours. You're not doing therapy wrong.
And I will never take somebody that's not something that I am really good at. I am really bad at working with like transgender clients, especially adolescents. Not something that I'm good at, not something that I just won't do it.
Let's say something you're not effective at.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Nice
that from you.
reframe, Doug.
I learned that from you, Mom.
Nice
You
reframe.
sure did.
John, you were going to say something too, right?
But I think the important thing to understand is that both parties in the room are the ones who are going to decide if the relationship continues.
Yes.
Yes.
The thing that I do with all new clients is in our first session, I say, what I'd like us to do is commit to doing 3 sessions together. And during the course of those 3 sessions, we're going to get to know each other. You're going to see how I work. I'm going to hear more about what your challenges are. And then in that 3rd session, you and I are going to sit down and we're going to talk about it and say, am I the right therapist for you? Are you the right client for me? And either of us can pull the plug on it. If I'm the one who says, I don't know if what I offer is what you need, I have amazing referrals in the area and I can help you find people. And if you feel like I don't quite get you, I will still help you refer and we'll get you out there to the people who can. But I think that empowers the room because then it's actually a conscious decision, not just to like, well, I guess I just keep showing up each week. And in kind of working with that, I also do this thing where about once a month, every 6 weeks, we do a check-in. How's it going? How are you feeling? Are we on track? And my favorite question, is there something that I've missed that we should be talking about?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do it that way, but I like what you're saying about after the 3 sessions, having that check-in.
Yeah.
I'll do it at the end of the first session. I'll say, how are you feeling
Yeah,
right
that's
now?
what I do.
Yeah.
Let's check in,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of like, are we speaking the same language in a way?
I just usually say, so if you want to book another session, let me know. You know, if you want to continue working together, this is what happens. And obviously they're usually like, of course.
And I think it's funny though, because what I've learned over the years is that first session, most of your clients do not remember 99% of it because their anxiety levels have been so high.
Good point.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like a client will come in like a few weeks later. This is actually a true story. So a few years ago, I was in a bike accident. I broke my collarbone. And so I was in a sling for about 11 weeks. And I had a new client come in and we were working and chatting and worked for a while. And about the 5th session, they said, oh, what happened to your arm? And that's because the anxiety can be so high in the room for our clients.
Yeah.
And they may not be in a space where they actually remember anything about that
So
first
true.
session.
Right.
You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
I love the idea of checking in with them over time. Like even for me, 6 months or a year later, because for some of the clients that I work with after a year, or if they're with me, you know, even longer than that, where they are at that moment versus where they were when they started are vastly different. And I'm a big fan of going, you can try another therapist because where your story is now is a different beginning than where you begun it with me. And that might be kind of fun and interesting to start from that place and see how that goes.
Right.
They hardly
Never want to
ever
leave you. Yeah.
Usually not,
Obviously.
but
Yeah.
I encourage that just to kind of check it out. I want to go back to something that John said though, and see how where we all are on this. And we'll see how honest we are too.
Ooh.
John mentioned that our clients, when they're first coming to us, will Google us and check us out and try to find us. You know where I'm going. So when you get a new client, do you Google your client?
Ooh, Doug.
Crickets.
I will be very honest. I've actually worked with this is interesting. I've worked with some industry people as well too. one of the things that will happen is often, I'll be totally honest, I'm not a really like media savvy person. And so they'll come in and I won't actually know like who they are or what they've done. And I'll talk to them. It's like, do you want me to know who you are and what you do? Or would you rather that I don't, and we can work with me not having any idea of what that is?
Nice.
And oftentimes they request that I do not.
Yeah.
And that I stay kind of innocent in what their career is in the world.
Is that when you do?
No, I don't. No, I respect that.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating because what it does is it allows me to, once again, work in this really innocent space about what the pressures or ideas of their career are and let them create it for me. And then I get to walk into that space with them. So even when I've been tempted to, I actually don't Google clients.
Right.
Nice.
I think it's more for my sense of well-being, because what if I find some information that hasn't come up in the room and then I start leading into the room? It's like, why would I know that?
Yeah.
So I actually don't Google clients at all.
I will say I do not Google clients. I am very tempted to. That's the human in me.
Sure.
But
why don't you? Like what stops you?
Same of what John said, really,
Yeah.
is it almost contaminates the purity of the space. And same thing with you, with people in the entertainment industry. I will say, sometimes I obviously know who they are. I will say, how do you feel about me watching your show? I will be honest, if I'm already watching the show and they come in, I will say, I just want you to be aware that I do watch this show. Are you okay with that? So I'm very authentic about that. A lot of them want me to see their art, watch their art. And I've had a couple people say, it's really nice to finally have somebody who is separate than that. And that feels really important to me.
Right.
The times I'm most tempted to Google is when it's another lesbian client, because our community is so small. So I have had someone come in, and in 4 sessions, we realized that her wife and I dated the same person at the same time 10 years ago.
Wow.
And then her wife found, it got really sticky. So I had to refer her out.
Right.
But because of that experience, anytime I'm working with another queer woman, there's always that, do we know each other? It's a smaller community.
Sure.
But I also figure at this point, maybe they know my name, they've seen my picture, maybe they would know, but that's hard.
The only time I really Google people is when I recognize their name. So born and raised in LA. If I recognize their name and I want to double check if either I know them or I went to school with them.
Right.
Did I date them? Or their siblings? Or at this point in life, is it the kid of somebody that I know? I will Google them and just say and look and be like, oh, crap. Because it's happened before. And so I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Doug, do you Google your clients?
Oh, yeah. I stalk the hell out of them. I'm on Instagram.
Not surprised.
I'm on.
I bet you're friends with all of them too, huh?
Yeah, that's fine, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I used to. I actually used to Google some when I was starting out, because I would want to get a sense of, is what they're representing to me actually what's true? Because a lot of clients that would say that they were very successful, they were doing certain things, and I wouldn't have heard of their shows or wouldn't have heard of their music or what they're doing. And I would Google just to see, because I wasn't familiar. I like your approach, Bonnie, of asking if they, actually both of you guys, asking, do you want me to know anything about that or not? I've had a lot of clients invite me to shows that they're putting on and, ask me if they saw certain movies or TV shows. And I like throwing it back as, would you like me to? I think of one of my favorite portrayals of a therapist on TV and film was from The West Wing. All the millennials will have no idea what I'm talking about, but that's all right. But there was a scene where I think it's Adam Arkin, the younger Arkin, is a therapist and he's working with the president. And at some point he goes, okay, Mr. President, we're done. And he gets up to walk away. And Martin Sheen's character says, I'm the president. I'll tell you when we're done. And he says, with all due respect, in this room, I'm going to be the one person that doesn't treat you like the president. And I love that because it created that space, and you don't have that power dynamic isn't in here. We're equal. And it wasn't that he was saying it as he has all the power. It was, there just isn't a power struggle in this room. That's not what it's about.
Yeah. I definitely have set boundaries in terms of everyone gets treated equally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's important too, is that the space that we set, going back to your West Wing reference, is that's one of the most important things about the therapy space. Back in school, they have this thing about holding the space, holding the vessel, that you're creating this. I know I work in a 50-minute session. We're creating this space that begins on time, ends in time. Anything can happen in between, but I think it's about respecting that this has a very contained energy. And in that containment, I find that it actually allows people to go deeper, because anybody can put their hand near the fire for a short time. But if you say, I don't know when we're going to pull your hand away, then I think that makes people a little bit uncomfortable to go into those deeper places.
Yeah.
But by knowing that I, as a therapist, work in a very tight framework, and that then allows clients to say, like, so if we go really deep, I know that there's an end in sight. I think that comes a little bit from yoga. I'm a yoga teacher as well.
Oh, wow.
And the thing that we always talk about is you can hold any pose for a certain amount of time, knowing that it's going to end.
Oh, it's so true. You're right.
And
I
so-
always need to know how many more breaths. I hate warrior 2. Or I dislike it.
There
I
you
don't
go.
do yoga.
But I think that idea of understanding that there's a real specific framework can help a client to go deeper.
Totally. I like that. And it's funny because Meredith and Bonnie were both snickering. 'cause-
Shame.
Well,
shame.
it's just you
I feel shame.
work differently. You don't stick to 50 minutes. I do. I'm like John. I mean,
I do.
if we're at 50 minutes and the
You do?
You do?
Stick to 50?
Yeah.
I do.
Oh,
Awesome.
I do.
Okay.
Awesome. Don't judge me.
I'm not judging you.
Okay.
I'm judging
Stop
her.
picking favorites, Doug.
I don't. I feel like it's very arbitrary. How did they come up with 50? Why isn't it an hour and 20?
I have to pee and heat up my coffee between sessions.
I know, but
That's
why-
my reason.
I thought you say right now. Okay, we can take
Oh,
a
no,
break.
no, I'm
Pause.
good.
Go ahead. You can pee. Bathroom's over there.
But why not an hour and
Accommodator.
20?
But I guess here's the thing. It could be an hour and 20,
Yes.
as long as it said our sessions
right.
are an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It could be 3 hours. There's a really amazing person here in Los Angeles who does this process where they actually go into families and they do like a 6-hour session with them in their homes.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
It's this really expensive thing. They work with the family dynamics. It's all family oriented stuff. And that's the framework they've set up. But once again, the framework is known.
Mhm.
We're going to have this 6-hour day. It's going to be a marathon. This is what can happen. These are when we're taking breaks. So the clients know how it plays out. So it could be an hour,
Right.
20 minutes. It could be 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Fine.
But for
It's
me
just
personally,
known,
I
yeah.
think it's being specific with the framework really helps.
I think for so many of my clients, I would almost say for all of them, boundaries, containment, saying what you need, trust, all of that comes up, right? So for me, if I choose a 50-minute session, or maybe it's 90 minutes, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
we do a double session, it's being able to say, I've said this is 50 and I'm going to stick to that.
Right.
So I'm also modeling
Of course.
to you,
Yeah.
Right.
right? That I can both love you and I can want to continue. And when you're a good therapist, you get going.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't
Yeah.
want it to
Right.
stop. And I'm like,
Totally.
now we're talking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you need to trust that
Yeah.
I'm going to maintain my word and this is going to end at 50. And I need to also,
Self-care.
again, pee,
Yep.
heat up my coffee.
Yep. 100%.
Right? I'm a new mom, so maybe pump a little milk, whatever I
mean,
need to do.
Who doesn't need to pump milk?
Right?
Now you're talking.
Exactly. And then have a couple moments to get grounded
Yeah.
back in my energy for the next person that's going to walk in. So it's boundaried for me, it's boundaried for the client.
Yeah.
And even though it's sometimes hard, right? Because sometimes at the very end of the session, right?
The doorknob.
Yeah, the doorknob confession,
Yep.
right? Your client drops a bomb and you're like, oh, I want to go there so bad. And this is why we have next week.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not
Right.
about the 50 minutes. You pay so much for therapy, right? And so it's like, okay, I'm paying this much for 50 minutes. It's not about the 50 minutes,
It's the boundary.
right? It's that, and it's the continuation of the time you have together.
Right.
So I always say it's like each 50 minutes is like you're knitting a sweater. It's just
Yeah.
one
Ooh.
notch, right?
Listen to that
Isn't that
analogy.
beautiful?
No, they both busted analogies.
I
I love
know.
it. The fire, the sweater.
Yep.
Yeah. Although if you had the fire going, you wouldn't need the sweater.
That's funny, Doug.
Yeah,
Good
thanks.
one. Good
I'm
one.
trying. You said something earlier, Bonnie. I said I was going to come back to it. And,
Oh,
and
you
now I am.
did?
Yeah.
I trust you. See, now I trust
Mm.
what you're saying.
Good one.
It's the memory. It
Yeah.
works weird that way. When you said you have a lot of, enthusiasm in your energy for a new client, like you love that, you get into that,
Right.
that excitement of a brand new client. I think that's very true. It's partly why we love what we do, and we feel that and we get into that. And it's, I think, something I say to my clients all the time, like, I love where you are when they're just coming in the door, because it's saying, I might have been scared, I might have been anxious, and I want to change. I want things to be different. And I love that time in a person's life. Right.
Right? You're here. You showed up.
Right. Right. That excitement, I think it's a given for us. I mean, I know each of you that you each love what you do, right?
Yes, very much.
So much.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for that.
But
too.
I have an interesting thought too. So we're talking about the excitement of the new client.
Mm-hmm.
How do y'all maintain that excitement for the long-term ongoing
Ooh.
client?
Good one.
Oh, I like it.
With DBT, we do a lot of phone coaching. So I'm pretty much 24/7 engaging with my clients via text or phone or whatever, which again, I really like what I do. So I think that my enthusiasm maintaining it is also like the ebb and flow of their journey. If their progress is just an upward trajectory, I am so excited for it. And if it, has its ups and downs, then my work with them is so intense and there's a lot of concern that it just keeps that engagement going.
Right.
Yeah. So you're riding the ups and downs
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I shared this with you earlier. I used to work at a DBT place as well.
Right.
And so I'm trained in DBT, and good for you, because I really struggled I love the people I was working with. I love DBT.
Yeah.
They're so supportive. I couldn't do the phone coaching.
Yeah.
I knew that I could not keep carrying that on.
Yeah.
So it's so amazing that you do that and you do love that. And I know how much it works for people who need it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
You said doo-doo.
I did. I did. And you know what? I feel really good about it, Doug.
Yeah. When you let the doo-doo out, it feels so much better.
I actually use that term with clients all the time.
I do that too.
Editing is a magical thing.
We're not editing that out.
No, I mean, why would you edit doo-doo out?
No,
I don't understand.
Sometimes it's just a moist situation.
Please.
Okay, but back to you. How do you stay engaged
So,
or enthusiastic?
how do I stay enthusiastic? I mean this when I say it. I don't feel like I get bored often.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my relationships with clients, they're the years. I've worked with them for a long time, and you do deeper work and you think like, well, what do you have to do when you've seen someone for 6 years?
Yeah.
It always surprises me how much more there is. Or maybe you've worked with someone for 4 years, you're super close, and they tell you something and they've never even registered that as trauma. And you're sitting there just, what?
Right.
And I wonder why you've never shared that before. Now, I might not get bored, but sometimes we get stuck, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so what do we do with what I call stuckness? That's when I'll go back and say, let's look at what you've accomplished so far. Have we completed our goals? Is it time to set new ones? Right?
Yeah.
And then we can reflect on that and kind of start maybe going down a different path together.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
I love that. For me, a lot of what I do in the very beginning with the client is create that conceptualization of who they are, where they want to be based on what they say and what we paint. And then we work on how we're going to get there, right? And we fill in all the pieces along the way. So a lot of it is just that journey. And I love that journey. And we lay a lot of foundational work because I know, okay, they want to go way over there, but we're not there yet. It's not like I'm withholding anything and I'm not going, ooh, I've got this key that's going to unlock something amazing for their life, but I have to wait until, 4 months down the line when they say this certain thing. It's not quite that. There's no blueprint for it that way. It's more organic. And that's part of what keeps me enthused because I keep listening for where are they right now? Where do they want to be? What's the best route to get us there? And can I bring something back that we talked about before that's going to highlight where we want to go and that's going to make this step a little bit easier? And it's, to me, the most fun is being that creative and holding those pieces. Maybe it's part of how I used to put music together. Like I can hear a verse over here and we need to get to the chorus, but we got to find that bridge. And then it's a lot of moving pieces, right? And that's something that I don't really tire of. I get excited every time I sit down with a client, even when clients come in, and I'm sure we all know this, where they go, I have no idea what I want to talk about today.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
Best sessions.
Yeah.
Right.
The best sessions
Right.
start with, everything's good. I don't know what I want to talk about today. It's like, great.
Yep.
So Doug, you
Wonderful.
mentioned something interesting. As a musician, you talked about you see what's happening in the room almost as music, that you see different notes playing in different areas and rhythms and stuff like that. For myself, if you ask me anything about a client in between sessions, I will probably blank out on you. But the minute a client comes in, for me, what happens is it's almost like this beautiful like network opens up around them. I kind of like picture it like Tinker Toys when we were kids. And like you have the sticks and they go into these little knobs and then they go to other knobs and stuff like that. So this web kind of opens up around them and we'll be talking about something and all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, it connects to this axis knob over here. So for you, where it's maybe music and conducting and movement and hearing rhythm that way, for me, the storage comes in this kind of almost structure that shows up around clients.
Ooh.
What about the two of you? How do you have you ever thought about like, how does that concept work for you?
No.
That, yes. Like you, yeah, I almost see images around people. And I think as you're saying that, I'm like, it's an intuitive thing, right? And even in the first session you had with a client in this podcast, there was, I'm trying to remember what it was, but Meredith, you said, I so badly wanted you to ask
about the brother.
Right?
Yeah.
And there are so many times where I'm like, oh, I want to go down there, but I'm going to hold and keep listening and see what happens. So I always put them on these Post-it notes in my mind. And it's not that I'm seeing those Post-it notes every time I sit with the client, but sometimes a therapeutic window opens and I get to grab one. I'm like, here we go.
Ooh.
Here's my opening, right? They're ready. Maybe they weren't ready before. And I trusted that intuition of now's not the time.
The wise
even
mind.
Though yes, even though I wanted to go there. Yes, DBT, right? But here's my opening and now we get to walk down that path together.
Between sessions, because we've phone coached so much, even the clients that I don't do full on DBT with, I usually just phone coach with because I'm just so used to it. So I talk to them a lot in between and because I'm always so into the details.
I was listening to something about, I think it was someone who works with war veterans, and they were talking about when they come home from war, they just feel lost. And, they asked these veterans, like, what do you miss? And most of them said, everything. I miss being there. And part of it was the camaraderie and being a part of something bigger. But there was something that I really liked, which was about this singular focus of when I'm in a war, I have one job, I have one thing, and it's a very heightened state of alert. It's why I think you hear of peak performance in athletes all the time, that they're in the zone. And, why Michael Jordan can have a flu and still drop 80 points. It's because he gets into the zone and he's there and he's singularly focused on what he's doing. When you're with a client, John, when we're with clients, we are singularly focused on them.
It's the best.
There's a lot going on and it takes a lot for us. I mean, it's like playing a basketball game or not quite being in war. Sometimes it might feel like that in a battle, but we are acutely aware of them, everything they've been through, everywhere they want to go, how they're thinking, how they process, what would help them from our tools and how do we do this? And that's exhausting and exciting. And I think a wonderful blend, but a way for us, I think, to be fully present and singularly focused on them, when they're in the room.
And I think it's really interesting for clients too, because sometimes, especially working with adolescents, you'll reach a point where you'll notice some discomfort in the room. And one of the things I like to address is like, it's kind of weird having someone really listen to you, isn't it? Because so much of our time we walk around the world and you'll go to the grocery store. Did you find what you need? Yes. How are you today? I'm fine. There's this conversational style of listening. But when you're in the room with your therapist, they are present on a level that most people don't experience on a regular basis. And that can be a little bit disconcerting. And just like, it's weird having someone actually really listen and be present with you.
How wonderful too that you say that, right? Because this work is so relational. To me, it's so incredibly intimate and connected, but that you can just call that out and say, what's it like? This is uncomfortable for you.
Well, and think about it. We do it, dozens of times a week, hundreds of times with hundreds of people. A client is only doing it once in that one moment. So we know what it's like, but we actually don't know what it's specifically like for them in that moment, which is why we ask. And we're aware that they haven't done it hundreds of times, right?
Yeah. For me, last year, my mom passed away and I went back to work the next day because it was the only thing that kept me okay, was sitting in the room with my clients, one after another or whatever, because I didn't think at all. I was so engaged and present, and everyone was like, what are you doing at work? And
How
I was
can
like,
you do that?
Yeah. And I was like,
Right.
It's the only thing I can do, because I literally, and maybe I had a half an hour break in between and it sucked and it was horrible, but being with my clients was like the only thing that kept me going. And so, some of them I was transparent with, and I told them like, no, you're saving me right now. Like, this is the best possible thing I could do. So
Right.
those moments, I am so present and engaged. Like, I am not in anything else except for maybe yoga. But even yoga, I'm like, oh, this hurts.
Right. And that's going back to Michael Jordan, but the other one, Kobe Bryant,
Yeah.
when he had the big court case in Colorado, I think one of those games, he dropped 81 points.
Yep.
And that was because he could singularly focus. Like, basketball is the thing that I do. I can do that, right? My life might be falling apart or whatever it is off the court, but on the court, I'm in that zone. And that zone is, I think, a wonderful place to be, especially it's one for us that involves depth and involves authenticity, right?
Mindfulness.
Meredith, I think it's so important too, talking about that we as therapists are people too.
Yep.
And we go through real shit ourselves. And I also be curious. I kind of have an idea where this question's going to go in this room. Your relationship, do you have a therapist yourself? Because I have an ongoing relationship with an amazing therapist. She's been my therapist probably for 20 years now. We don't see each other all the time.
Right.
But it's great because when something comes up, I can go to her and say, hey, I need to check in, and we'll do like 3 months, 6 months. She has the history of who I am. So she can like, is it that thing again? You're like, damn it, it is. But I think it is so vital for us as therapists to have our own therapist and also to have colleagues to consult with so that we're not trying to manage it all on our own.
Totally.
So who has a therapist?
Ha ha ha.
Doug. Raising hands does not show up on the podcast, Doug.
Don't out me. I have no problem with that. Yes, I see a therapist. I love it.
Yeah.
And like you, John, it's somebody that I've known for over 20 years. Doesn't mean I've been going all 20 years. In fact, I've taken at least a decade off for a while. And I had a colleague of his that he recommended once, who was sort of like the good mother. It was a female therapist who provided something very different for me than he provided. And when I'm going through something, I know, okay, do I need the good mother or the good father? Like, which figure am I looking for here, so to speak? And I've leaned on each of them over the years, and it's been incredibly, rewarding for me, because my bias as a human, not as a therapist, is I'm committed to my own personal growth, and that's never ending. I don't ever want to stop growing as a person and as a human. So therapy is something that helps me along that path.
Right. It's interesting because when you asked that, I felt a touch of shame because I'm not in therapy.
At the moment.
At the moment,
right.
I believe all therapists would greatly benefit from also having a therapist. For me, I had a therapist for many, many years. She was exactly what I needed at a time of differentiating from my family, individuating, stepping more into my sexuality. She was also lesbian identified and just was a really powerful mirror for me that I really needed. Because of my involvement in the therapist community, our paths crossed professionally in many ways. So she's not somebody that I would at this time be able to see again. And every now and then I think about finding a new therapist that would be very different. I don't really need that mirror anymore. Maybe I should see a straight man to work through some of my stuff with. But it's also hard to find a good therapist when you're a therapist, when you know a lot of good therapists, or you're very judgmental about what good therapy is. And so I'm always asking around, do you have someone? Maybe not Northeast LA. So I will get back into therapy soon, but it is really important.
It's funny that I think a lot of our clients want a therapist that's good and close to them. When it's a therapist looking for a therapist, like, I want somebody that's good and far away from me.
Right.
Like, they don't want to be right near where they are.
Not me. I was in therapy for a while, and she's amazing. And actually, the reason that I stopped seeing her specifically was because she moved to the East Side. And I'm an asshole. And yes, judging
myself. Can I have her
myself.
name and number?
Yeah, she's amazing.
Awesome.
And not a lesbian. So
I don't need that. At
Right.
this time.
That's what I'm saying. So
Perfect.
And then since then, I've tried a few different people. And then what actually goes on in my mind is I know everything that I need to know. I'm just not doing it. And that's not true. It's just not true. I want to be back in therapy and I will. Damn it.
You go get them.
I'm going to.
And
yes.
for me, it's also not just personal therapy, but you're right. Because sometimes a therapist in their own mind can be their own worst therapist.
Oh, for sure.
And so that's why having that resource to go to can be really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same as Doug, though. It's an ongoing relationship that I step in and step out of.
Yeah.
Just really important. But the other piece that's so important to me is also consultation. Because not just being our own worst therapist for ourselves, but sometimes we can get lost in an idea of what we think is going on in the room. And sometimes it doesn't work out the way we want it to. And having a consultation person, that's like being able to talk to another therapist, reach out. It's like, this thing's been going on and I'm really confused. And they'll be like, have you thought of this? And you're like, oh.
Nope.
Right.
And I think it's so important for us as therapists to also be open and have a great consultation network so we can get support when we've got challenges showing up in the room with clients.
Especially in private practice, it's so lonely. You know, I was explaining to my wife a couple years ago that we have these intense sessions, right? And then we drive home usually alone and it's quiet. It's very different than the entertainment industry where there's an applause, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody also, it's so great this podcast is happening because nobody knows what we do,
Yeah.
right? So my wife thinks I'm the most brilliant therapist. She has no idea. I could be terrible. You know what I mean? I could be the worst therapist in the world because nobody sees what we do. And there's something about that that can be incredibly lonely. And then we can't really go home and talk about it. So we have our colleagues and yes, we maintain confidentiality, but we can, it's almost like we speak the same language. We can talk about a case or say, am I missing something? Yeah. I feel really stuck, or I feel something's coming up in me. I'm having countertransference, or I'm feeling triggered or avoidant. What's going on? And we can very lovingly and compassionately challenge one another. And someone can say something that you're going, I literally never thought to say that or to do that. Right. And it's just, it's so important to have a community within this work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very grateful. I have a team of 15, 18 of us that are in the same office. I think that I would go crazy if I was just like alone in an office all day. I'm not that exciting in my own head all day long. And to have all these different people to consult with. Because to be honest, if I had to reach out every day to consult with someone or even, you know, once in a while, I probably wouldn't do it. But just that I can, you know, stop someone in the hallway or, you know, I'm very, very lucky, very grateful. And yeah, it does get really lonely. You know, we are human.
That's why I miss you in my building, Bonnie.
I miss you too, Dad.
But we used to have that. And I think having that in my building, you know, there's a bunch of therapists and it's a collaborative community. We're all talking to each other a lot. And I think there were times when people's doors would be open and you just walk in and you go, you know, oh man, I just fucking killed it with this family. I'm a family ninja. Watch me go. Check this out. Guess what I just did?
Or I just fucked up real bad.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But either way, we don't get the applause.
Yeah.
So it's being able to do that with each other is amazing. And sometimes it is on the drive home, you call a colleague and you just want to share what you did. Because nobody hears you or sees you or knows you except for the client. Right?
Do you have that in your office now?
So I left Doug's building, very sad.
Yeah.
To be closer to home because I had a baby 10 months ago.
Whatever.
Wow.
And I wanted to be close in case something happened and was also just ready to build my own space. So I took a large raw space and built 2 offices in the lobby and furnished it with a close friend and colleague of mine. So it's just the 2 of us.
Okay.
But if she's not there, I'm alone. But when she's there, you know, it's so nice
fun.
to be able to run into each other's office and be like, do you know what I just said?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Or her wife makes me lunch on Tuesdays.
Oh, fun.
That's very nice. So I have somebody there, which I'm really lucky, but it's also different when you have a community like Doug's built, because with that, if Mona wasn't there, Doug was there. And if Doug, and
Yeah.
you could just pop in, smile.
Yeah.
And it was
Not that we
lovely.
say who the client is or what was
No,
like. We're
not
always
at all.
maintaining confidentiality. It's not like, guess what this client
Nope.
said.
Yeah.
And this is who it's what our experience is and getting validation for ourselves professionally and personally sometimes too.
Right.
Right.
What about you,
Totally.
John?
So for me, we've got an office space. I've got 2 colleagues who work with me. So we're available to each other that way. But I also have this cool thing. We've got this kind of group text going with some colleagues of mine. And there are kind of 2 ways we use it. One is tough session, send me some good energy. And people
I
just
love
like text
that.
you back saying, you got this, you're great, emojis, yay. And then the other version is tough session, anyone free to chat.
Oh,
And that's the
that.
thing that we all reach out and say like, okay, I'll give you a call. I've got a break in 10 minutes.
that's awesome.
And having that kind of immediate support is really powerful too. And even just knowing it's there is a great way
Yeah.
to keep my group connected.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So-
Can we be a part of that?
So you said tough session. What about when it's a good session or a good moment? Do you guys text that or is it not really as much?
We're not using it that way in particular. We're really using it more as a support for I'm in a challenge moment.
Mhm.
Do you get those other moments?
Okay, I'm going to be completely honest. I am so good at doing my happy dance that my internal sense of validation is perfectly legit and happy.
Nice.
And also, when I was a newbie intern, one of my supervisors gave me this great idea, and I've done it ever since, is I have what's called kind of a success journal. And you notate those moments when something spectacular has happened in the room. Because in this work, it's easy to lose track of that sometimes.
Totally.
And so you can go back and look like, oh my God, I forgot 3 years ago I had that really cool interaction.
Aw.
That was so wonderful.
That's awesome.
And
That's
so
amazing.
for me, the success side, like I said, I'm more than happy to do my happy Snoopy dance.
Oh my God.
Do you get this? I get this sometimes with adolescents who I love working with and teenagers, especially when you start like middle school or high school, then you see them through college and then they go off. But every now and then I'll get a card from a parent or sometimes from the
Like
kid
a
themselves.
handwritten card in the mail?
Handwritten card in the mail.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That's
it's,
cute, Doug.
I know.
It's amazing. And it's really nice and wonderful. And I'm guessing, but I don't know. Do you get that, John, from some of yours?
So the version of it that I get is, first of all, I do work through kids like through high school, through graduation. And then in August, I get to go through that moment of like, my babies are going off to college. So I do get to have that moment. And that's one of those moments when I will consult with my group.
Right.
And then what I get a lot of times is like a quick email. It's just like, oh, settled in, doing that thing. And then like, hey, I'm home for the holidays. Any way we can do a holiday session? I just want to let you know how I'm doing. And that ongoing relationship is really fantastic and really exciting.
I
Yeah.
love that. I have a handful of clients that I worked with in high school. During college, they would come home for the holidays and stuff. They've graduated from college. They've come back. Now I'm working with them again. And it's,
Nice.
oh my God, it's the best thing ever. I
What
love
about,
it.
there's 2 things that I love too, is when I get a sibling of a client, like the younger sibling will come because the other one worked with me and had a great experience. I love that. And the second, and I know some of this about some of you, but I want to hear you say it on air. When you have clients that decide to become therapists themselves and go to school for
yes.
that.
Best.
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of people who then go to school to become therapists. So I also have worked with a lot of therapists who are in school, who are doing their traineeship or internship and need to work with a licensed therapist. So I don't know. It's a cool thing to be part of that journey. And also within school, I think a lot comes up for them as well.
Oh yeah.
So there's just more to work with.
Yeah, I love it. And I have a lot of clients who come to me very depressed and I can't do anything. I hate everything. I don't like anything.
Everything.
Everything.
Right.
That's, yes, they're hyperbolic, just like me. This one kid I had come to me, he's probably in his mid-20s, misanthropic, I hate the world, everyone sucks, I'm never going to like anything. So I printed out a list of, I think, 250 or 300 possible careers and made him look through them in my office. And it was like every page just tossed on the floor. Nope, nope, nope. And every single one was a no. And I was like, okay. So he ended up going to Antioch.
Wow.
And he just graduated a little bit ago and is working and doing his hours. And like the most heartwarming thing ever. So there's a few clients actually that, because they have no path and hate everything and don't want to do anything, I'm like, well, and it's
become a therapist.
I think I left this part out. Hold on.
Yeah. Let's qualify that a little bit, shall we?
Based on me in the room feeling their intuition and their empath, and me sensing that even though they have no sense of it, I could tell that it would be something they'd be really good at.
And go ahead, Bonnie.
I was just going to say, I don't want to assume that client's experience, but if they're coming in feeling like I don't like anything except for this space.
Exactly.
Right. And, or maybe I don't like anyone except for you or this, whatever this is, they might realize they want more of it.
Yep.
And can they then create that space for other people struggling as well?
Yep. And they show up no matter what they hate, they show up every week.
Yeah.
And so it's been so magical to watch like a few of these clients go through that. I absolutely love it.
And I would say too, that part of what you're saying, Bonnie, to piggyback on that, it's their experience, not just in the room or this relationship, but having been through whatever they've been through, depression, anxiety, they have a great frame of reference from which they can now give back and help by going, I can relate to somebody else because I've been there. I know it. I've been through it. And now if I get the tools to really help somebody, I want to do that. Right?
And one of the things I love to do when someone identifies that they want to go into psychology is I say, and remember this moment. Remember your experiences in therapy, because someday you're going to be sitting across from a client. And if you can remember all of this, you're going to remember how they felt and how they're feeling, and you'll be more empathic. So remember all of this when you go forward in this career. It's pretty powerful.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I love that.
Okay, but let me ask you a quick honesty question then. Because a lot of times when I'm working with associates and interns, these are people who
I
are
thought you were going to say when
hours.
I'm working with sociopaths. I was like, okay.
Bring it on. We're going there.
A lot of times newer therapists will do this thing that I call their therapy voice.
Oh, God.
Oh, geez.
So tell me how that makes you feel. And for me, I said, you have to look at the authenticity of that moment. And although that may feel like you're trying to create something in the room, is it actually you being authentic? Because that alignment that we do with clients, that attunement is based on our authenticity as well.
Right.
And even, we've talked earlier, all of us are very open in the room about who we are and what we do in the world. Even if you're a therapist who holds your information much more closely, that authenticity and attunement is so important. And to me, that therapist voice, and I've experienced from other therapists that I've gone to in the past,
Can you give
is
us
really
an example?
off-putting. So Bonnie, how did that make you feel?
So uncomfortable.
Okay.
Tell me more about that discomfort. Can we move towards that?
But
No judgment.
But
We're not judging.
But when you hear our voices here, this is who we are.
Yeah.
This is us
Right.
being real. This is my inflections. This is my passions. This is my excitement showing up. And for me as a therapist to disguise that in the room makes me less able to attune to the person I'm working with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not about me dominating the room or the story, but it's about me just being so authentic in who I am that it's there. And it's
Right.
so much easier too.
It really is.
Absolutely. And it allows the client to drop their guard and be who they are, because it
Right.
really is just about finding that authenticity.
Yeah.
I talk to my associates about that as well. And I've never had somebody put on a therapist voice, but the way you carry your body, right? Feeling like I have to sit up tall, I have to sit a certain way. And I feel like our clients can feel if we're anxious, if we're putting on something, if we're trying to act professional or look professional or sit whatever sitting professional looks like.
Right.
I will
I
will sit with my legs crossed like this. I always have coffee next to me. I'm just myself.
But we've
in
been
the
doing
room.
this a while, and we found who we are, and we found a way to bring that out. I remember when I first started, and I would tell my associates this too, that when I first started, I was freaked out about moving my body, that a client might see me move my body.
We just almost had a spit take here.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
That was
Right.
moisture almost spewed out of your mouth. But really, I thought, I can't cross my legs. I can't grab my water. I can't move my arms.
Right.
I need to be, very present for them exactly this way.
Right.
Because I thought they were interpreting me the way I was interpreting them. And Then I thought about, wait, my therapist would like blow his nose, would stick his coffee in his little microwave, you know?
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, wait, it's about finding who you are in the room and being that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, some of my clients and I joke about that I use my hands a lot. Like I'm always using my hands.
Gesturing and such.
Yeah.
Who's going to say that's what? No, that's what she said. You guys, you really let me down.
Damn it.
You really let me down.
was-
I
That's what
just
she
said
said.
I use my hands.
That would have been a great moment. Yeah. Sometimes I sit on the floor with my clients. Like sometimes, like, and I always sit like this.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can't see me, but my legs are always up because it's just uncomfortable. I don't know.
Yeah. You're
No.
sitting for hours.
I feel like my ass is going to
A
get like
day.
wide and flat.
Or
So I fuck off. I do a lot
Mom
of
and
squats.
Dad are fighting again.
Stop.
I do a
So
lot of
the
squats.
other thing too, though, and I think it's really fascinating, is that as I have matured as a therapist and continue to learn, I actually find myself doing less and less and less in the room.
Yes.
what do you mean by that?
What I mean is that when I was just beginning and really excited about everything, a client would come in and present something, and I would want to fold out every possible piece of homework I had, every theoretical orientation I'd heard about that thing, tons of exercises. Let's do 14 meditations in this one session. And what I found is it just overwhelms the client. It floods them.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And I have a joke with a lot of my teens, and what I say sometimes is, so I just flooded you, didn't I? I just like totally waved over you with my excitement about something. And I pull it back, and I've just learned over time that it's just like bringing less and being present more is so incredibly powerful in the room.
Yeah.
I was talking to a colleague about this the other day that I feel like when I'm a little bit under the weather, I'm almost a better therapist.
Hmm.
I'm very active in the room, but there's also this idea of sitting back and registering the impact of somebody.
Yeah.
And I talk to my associates about not trying too hard. You don't have to try at all, really. Just be present, register the impact. How is this person making you feel? Sit, and you're going to know how to show up in that space.
I think we're all similar. I'm so active in the room. I just get really excited about everything. So hyperbolic, honestly. I'm like, oh my God, wait. Okay, hold on. Tell me.
I call it a lean forward therapist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I also think it's really important too to not get caught up in that idea that we have to do performance art for our clients.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Because once again, in training therapists, a lot of times we'll videotape and you'll watch either that body posture
Yep.
thing of, hi, I am the therapist in the room, or these energies of like, I just learned this new modality and I'm going to apply it to you, whether it counts or not. And it is about, I think, a certain maturity that comes in. And once about just being completely present with the client and being authentic with them. Because this may be the first time in a long time that someone has been authentic with them.
Yep.
And working with teens, my joke is teens have an amazing bullshit meter. And if you try and fake it with them, they will call you on
Oh,
it in
God.
a second.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny because I would have previously said that what that requires, like what we're talking about and describing, experience. And I think that's true to a certain degree, but I think more of what it requires is your own authenticity. Because I've known therapists that are fairly newer therapists, and they're amazing. And they're amazing because they know who they are, they know how they are in a room, and they're fine. Right. And the experience with clients will come.
Right.
Right.
Do you find that they're older though? Like maybe not early 20s?
Correct.
Okay. So they maybe have more experience in life, not
Yeah.
necessarily with clients though.
Correct.
So they know themselves better.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call out the age thing because I think it's actually what you said second, that they know themselves better.
Yeah.
Because I've met 20-year-olds who know themselves
True.
so
True.
deeply.
True.
And
You're right,
like,
you're right.
you
Yeah.
have the potential to be an amazing
Yeah.
therapist.
Yeah.
And 70-year-olds who are like, you've got some work to do.
Very true. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Right. Right. In fact, there's something Meredith said about the client who's on this podcast is that your average client?
Jesus.
Because he's
So wise.
right. He's incredibly insightful. He's
Yeah.
been through a lot. He's had a lot of life experience in a short amount of time.
And he's a toddler.
Right. He's young. I mean, we're all old. But I think that idea that
Not you.
if you have some life experience or have been through some, it doesn't matter if you're 22, 42,
Yeah.
62.
Yeah.
It's how it works for you, how you've applied it, how you've been able to be authentic and bring that out. Right?
Although I will say, and I think we talked about this maybe just in person though, I can't remember, that our life experience, what we consider life experience, or if you've been through a lot, is all relative, right?
Right.
So, whether you've been through the war, death, destruction, whatever, or you've just been through whatever, your dog passed away, not to minimize that for anyone. That sounded bad. Anyway, it's all relative, right? So.
Right. Anxiety is anxiety. Sad is sad.
Right.
There are different scales of it, but if you felt an emotion, you know what that feels like.
Yeah.
You can relate to that.
Right.
Yeah.
What I love about you though, and I almost said this earlier, is when you acknowledged like that is not the client. A transgender person is not the client for me.
Yeah.
And I think as therapists, we have to own the type of clients that are good fits for us. And I don't want to say type of client, but the issues they're struggling with might not be in our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
No, we can't help everybody.
Yeah. And I do try to not be judgmental, but what I will judge is that when a therapist, like when I look at their website or when they specialize in everything. I just want to be like, no, you don't.
Totally.
Please don't take that.
That's not a specialization. Then. It's just I'm good at a lot of things.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And for the LGBTQ community, and I'm sure you've experienced this, they might come and say, well, my last therapist said they specialized in it. And they'll tell me things that are so incredibly harmful. Yeah. It makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
That just because you have a gay friend or a gay sibling, or maybe even you're LGBTQ yourself, doesn't mean that you know how to work in an affirmative space.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that plays out in a lot of different specializations. For me, if someone has identified disordered eating, to me, that's a life or death issue.
Mm-hmm.
I have some light training on it, but I do not consider myself a specialist.
Yeah.
I know some amazing people in this community who specialize in that.
Yep.
And that's where I'm going to send this client to.
Yep.
And I think this lays out in all kinds of different issues. If it is not something that I feel I have depth on, I want to make sure I get you to the right person.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something I learned from you early on is recognizing not just your limitations or what you're good at or not good at or need help with, but it's having that referral base, having a group of people that, eating disorder, this sounds emergent. I know exactly who to contact for this. It's such a strength. The strength as a therapist is not, I can handle anything. It's, I know a lot of people that can handle
and
just
to know
about anything.
what your strengths are and areas in which you're not so strong in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just sent a client to a good friend of mine who went to school with us as an eating disorder specialist because it's like you, I can do some of that, but for hitting that as a specialization.
Exactly.
You need somebody who this is what they do exactly.
And that's why with the paperwork I was talking about earlier that I receive before I see the person, if they're coming in, let's say they're active in their addiction. Yes, I have experience working with addicts. Yes, I have an experience around that. It's not my specialty.
Yeah.
And so if I know there's another therapist where they're going to just be in better hands, I'm going to probably pick up the phone and say, I want to be transparent with you up front, right? And offer 3 referrals. Or maybe I'll say, you can still come in. And at the end, I'll have a better sense of what it is you need.
Right.
Right. And I'll be able to hook you up with somebody who really specializes in this.
Yeah.
I find that really rewarding when you hook somebody up and it's a good fit.
Matchmaker.
I just did that for
I send a lot of people to Doug.
I send a lot of people to you.
But also to say, Doug knows a lot of therapists in this community.
Yeah.
He really enjoys being a bridge to help people find the right therapist. So I'll say, why don't you contact Doug? And here are a couple other people I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings up an interesting thing for me too, because when I was initially starting out, it was really about, me doing my work. And my message has changed so dramatically in every place that I speak and where I reach out into the community. And it's more about what psychology itself can offer to anybody.
Yeah.
It's this bigger message
I love
now.
that.
And maybe that comes because I have a very successful practice and I'm very set in, who I am in this work. But I think it's so important. You were talking earlier about what we do behind closed doors, but there are ways of us to speak powerfully and openly about this work like we're doing today to invite people in to go behind that closed door and to understand how amazing the work we do is and just how powerful it can be to change anyone's life.
True.
Yeah. In fact, I remember you knew me when I was first going into private practice, and I had a failed private practice, and the people I was doing it with and was around me, it was all about competition. It was about trying to build your individual practice and get your own clients. And there was a competition and a scarcity mentality to it. Right. And then I went back to a community mental health agency, then back into private practice, and we connected, or John and I, we stayed connected, I think. And it was really about how do we do this, as a collaborative community, and how do we really do this while we're helping each other out and finding those people you can refer to and not just thinking of yourself.
Yeah.
And you embody that so much and inspired me to, kind of create what I did on the East Side.
And I would think that is what creates success. Right. Whatever we define as success. But yeah.
And fulfillment.
I have associates contact me all the time asking to take me out to coffee to pick my brain about private practice. And I know other therapists who won't do that.
Right.
And for me, I've never said no. I will sit with people, help them, but it comes back to you, right? Because you're helping them. I love helping new therapists get clients and thrive in their own way. And it always comes back, right?
And it feels good. I mean, we do it. It's not just success, but it's fulfillment. And that's not just cliche. I think it's true. We do it because it feels good. And it's the Snoopy happy dance, if you can, right?
Right. Well, whatever success means
to you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I really got into this work for the money. I mean, straight up.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know Doug, that was his dry wit at play.
I really want to thank you guys for coming here. I mean, I love all you so much, and I really appreciate just talking about this. We're going to be doing a few of these throughout the podcast, and maybe we'll have you guys back on, not just to do the LGBTQ bit, but I think just hearing your voices and hearing your input. I mean,
just so fun.
Yeah.
This was fun. We could go for hours, Doug.
I know.
We probably could.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody'd keep listening, but we could go for hours.
We'll listen.
All right.
Yes. Well, thank you for holding this space for us, because it's important to connect and to have these greater conversations for other people to hear.
Gosh, we're such therapists.
I know.
Never turns off, does it?
Nope.
Well, it's about to. Well, that was our roundtable. We're not so round. It's kind of a tree stump shaped table.
It was actually.
Yeah, but I had a blast. I loved it.
It was super fun being able to just sort of chat with other therapists and get their insight and opinions. And
yeah, it's funny because we chat with a lot of therapists just as our friends, but to be chatting about, something specifically, was really cool. We generally haven't done a lot of that. That's not true. Actually, I do that all the time, but recording it is new.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So there were a few things in there that I really, I listened to it again, and it stuck out for me as like, oh, that was really cool. I'm going to use that. And a few things like when we were talking about the first session, and somebody was saying how the first session was enjoyable for them. Like they love, I think Bonnie was saying, I love first sessions.
Yeah.
And I remember, and we talked about it a little bit in the roundtable, just being petrified of a first session with a client. And, I think it's different for a new therapist and one who's been doing it for a while, like just where you feel a little more comfortable. And I don't know, maybe that's something clients can sniff out. Maybe that's things that aren't that important once you get going, but that anxiety that a client has about going to therapy for the first time, how am I going to do this? What's it going to sound like? Am I going to get it all out? Sometimes even that therapist will have anxiety about a first session too.
Exactly. I remember when I first started therapy that I chose to go to on my own. For so long, I had therapists on this pedestal that they were not human per se, that they didn't have fucked up lives themselves, or they didn't struggle or whatever.
They had their shit together. They were up there and better than any of us could ever be.
Yep. And that's definitely not true.
Right.
Hate to burst your bubble. But yeah, I think that hearing, just the things that the other therapists that were in the roundtable do, some of the things I was like, oh, that's super cool. I would never do that. And also that's super cool. And some of the things, we were talking about paperwork or something and, sending it online or versus whatever. And I was just like, oh yeah, okay, I want to do that.
Right. Yeah. Generally therapists work in isolation. You know, they're in their own office, in private practice, they're in their own office, and you don't really talk to that many people about what you're doing or how you're doing it. You know, fortunately in my building where I work, I've got a lot of therapists in there, and we have this collaborative community that we talked about on the roundtable where we do talk to each other and we do help each other out. And we do say, oh, I do it like this. Like, oh, you're doing that. Awesome. Let me try that.
Yeah, same. I have an amazing team I work with. 15, 18 therapists. So I'm very grateful for that.
Right. It's funny too, because John, I knew him, I think I was saying this when I first tried private practice, when I was doing community mental health and tried a private practice and started it, and it did not work. It did not go well. And John was with me for that. And I was talking to him about this a lot at the time. And it felt a lot like that isolation. I mean, I clung to John and a few of his colleagues, but around me, I didn't have much. And some of the other people around me were very competitive.
Yeah.
And they had this scarcity mentality of like needing to get clients and needing to get that. I'm like, this isn't the way to help people. This doesn't feel right.
So it's kind of like a client with a therapist. You find one you connect with and you click with. Same thing with us and other therapists, colleagues.
Yeah. And figuring out what we're doing. They teach us how to be in the room with the client, but they don't teach us how to set up your business or what you're doing or how you're doing it. And I think you're at the mercy of who you know around you and how much of a self-motivator you can be for putting that together, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And as a client, you're looking for, in part, who knows what they're doing, who feels comfortable, and who do I feel comfortable with? And that's why on the podcast, I like somebody, or the roundtable, somebody said, you know, that a client was able to relate to them because they'd gone through a similar experience, right? And my friend Nathaniel, who you know very well, was telling me about hearing something Steven Tyler from Aerosmith said, and he paraphrased it. So this is now going to be like 3 times removed. So
all hearsay.
Forgive me, Steven Tyler, if I fuck this up. But he said when he was looking for a new therapist, he would sit down in the room and go, so have you done heroin? And if the therapist said no, he'd go, well, I'm out of here because you're not going to be able to relate to me. You don't know what I'm talking about when I say what I say about that, right? And that's why I think specialties are really important. Like people come to you for addiction or eating disorder or things like that, and they know that you know that world. Yeah. Right? You know, if somebody came to me going, hey, I love my heroin, you can relate to that, right? Like, well, I can relate to loving something, but not heroin. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, roundtable, awesome. You guys will hear more of them too.
Yeah. And let us know what you guys want to hear therapists talking about, because we can talk about anything for hours. Literally what you heard us doing. I think when we stopped, we kept going for a while.
We did. And we came up with more ideas.
Right. Yep. Totally. And I'd love these ideas to come from you guys so we can give you what you want to hear. And even if there's a type of therapist, you know, Meredith and I work a certain way. John and Bonnie work a certain way. Like if you guys wanted to hear, well, how would you relate to therapists that come from a very rigid background? Or would it sound like having a specialist on this talk about something with you having such an eclectic approach?
Totally. Yeah. Would you like to hear a psychoanalyst? Would you like to hear a spiritual psychology therapist? I would like to hear all those.
Sure. Get them all in the room together.
Yep. Oh my God, that would be amazing.
And let us duke it all out. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. It's funny because a lot of my good colleagues and friends have very, very different approaches than I do. And we can still be friends and colleagues. It's not like we have to all do the same thing the same way at all.
No, we just fight behind closed doors.
Or talk shit about each other behind other doors. You should hear what I say about you.
Yeah, right.
No, you do hear what I say about you.
I do.
Thanks for listening to the Roundtable. Give us your ideas for more and we will get them to you.
Bye.
Bye.